working? Okay. All right, so welcome to our Seaway panel on how and why to pursue professional awards. Before we start, I just want to reiterate the great news and congratulate Jetta Rusin on her selection as an AAEA Fellow. Seaway supported her or submitted her nomination this year, and so we're very excited to see her selected. And this webinar, I really first have to thank Lorian Univer, Mary Bowman, and Valerie Mueller for putting this together. I'm just the Seaway chair putting up the introduction here. This is not my work, but it started from us really noticing the shortage of women fellows, in particular, of the AAEA. Since 2010, 8 out of 56 of the selected fellows have been women. But according to our Seaway survey data, women make up about 21% of tenure track full professors. And of course, there are a large proportion of women in government and nonprofit agricultural economics jobs as well. So given those numbers, we want to see what Seaway could do to really try to improve that or eliminate that disparity. And so we established a subcommittee looking at nominations and awards. And one of the things we noticed was not only that to get to be an AAEA fellow, you also needed to have prior awards. And so there was a lot of underlying structure that many of us were not aware of. I think particularly those, earlier on in our career, about the importance of these awards and how they really build upon each other and the economies of scale that you can realize in terms of putting together a packet and utilizing it for future award opportunities and really kind of nurturing that throughout your career. So that's what this webinar, we're hoping to share some tips from our highly lauded and awarded women here in Seaway to provide some tips on how we might be able to do that. Okay. So I will go ahead and introduce our panelists. We're going to be going in alphabetical order. If you have questions, you're welcome to drop them in the Q&A or in the chat, and I will monitor those and bring them up to the panel as appropriate. So we'll start with Damona Doi. She's Associate Vice President at the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service and Regents Professor at Oklahoma State University. She is currently a Food Systems Leadership Institute Fellow, serves on the Extension Board of Directors, and is the U.S. Vice President of the International Farm Management Association. Prior to becoming an administrator in February 2018, Damona served OSU as a farm management extension economist and the Rainbolt Chair of Agricultural Finance. She was co-leader of the OSU Master Cattleman Program and also provided leadership for educational programs targeted to women in agriculture. Damona is an AAEA Fellow and has won numerous awards from regional agricultural economics associations.
Thanks. All right, well, good afternoon and Happy New Year to everyone. I did put together a couple of slides just to organize my thoughts, and we may have some duplication. Well, so I look forward to the conversation because our pre-start in our Zoom session, there were some interesting comments made there. So I inverted the order of the questions in terms of why and how and why. And so I started with the why, and I'd say, why not? So there are opportunities to learn on a variety of fronts by applying for awards. And from an extension perspective, it may be even more important in the area of credentialing, because we don't have the same metrics in terms of H indexes or other kinds of things that we can document our impact. And so it can be a good signal if you've got awards for your extension work to RPT committees for instance, for peer validation. And so there's a lot of things that awards do in terms of signaling a regional and national reputation. So for instance, in our criteria for moving from assistant to associate or associate to full, you have to have documentation that you've advanced in terms of your reputation nationally. And then I think there's an element not only that's recognition for your work, but also for your team members in many cases, as well as your institution. So I remember having a conversation with one of my colleagues, for instance, and this may have been when I was acting department head, but encouraging them to apply for awards. And so you want to be humble and not promote yourself, but in fact, from my perspective as an administrator, it helps with to build the institution's reputation if we have regular award winners at different venues. And so I think it's important. I also looked at it as an opportunity, and so helped develop award applications for teams that I was involved in, maybe even other teams through service on our department's awards committee. But to help give them recognition and to help them build their vitas as well. So there's also an opportunity to add visibility to your program. So depending on the type of award, it may be that others see and then find out about your program and maybe want to engage with you to figure out new collaborations. I've certainly got inspiration from a number of award recipients that I've observed in different settings. And so, and again, reached out to some to make connections and to find out ways to partner, or in some cases to invite them to come to our state to do programming because it was a skill set that we were lacking and could benefit from. So I encourage you to uh, apply, because it also then can help to add and build further success. So generating interest in your program that way. Also put benchmarking there as a label, because I think it's helpful sometimes to see how you stack up. And so in some cases, maybe a limited number, but in some cases you get some feedback on your application. So that can be useful to helping you understand maybe what gaps you have or how you can better improve the programming or the packet. And so reviewer comments can be really helpful. So the how then starts with, you've got to have a good extension program to start with. So we had an extension Zoom, the AAEA extension section had a Zoom late last year. So I'd refer you to that if that's something that you missed or want to know more about. But the elements, I think, are kind of laid out, for instance, in the AAEA extension group award. In terms of, it points out, I pulled down the language, but you've got to have a clearly defined important problem and target audience. And by important problem, that doesn't mean that you have to have be solving world hunger or reaching global peace levels. Because in my case, for instance, one of my more successful program components was just teaching farmers how to use Quicken for financial record keeping. Record keeping was in my job description, so it was always an element of my program. But again, had a very applied nature. But because of varieties of audiences I worked with in terms of teaching that, because of different kinds of clientele, it was an important component often of my award applications. So sound economics is part of that. But as in my Quicken example, I think it's also important during your career, particularly early on, to start to develop something that's your own. So something that you can hang your hat on, that people think of you as, initially a regional expert and eventually as a national expert on. And so, for instance, with respect to Quicken, I started out doing a lot of in-state meetings, and then there were regional invitations. I did training for educators in multiple states, did events at National Cattlemen's meetings, a variety of those sorts of things. And so, again, by starting to, well, success, having some success then leads to opportunities that, again, helps to build that reputation. So along the way, it's important to conduct evaluations and document your impacts. And so document could be a theme here, I think, in that you need to have evidence of your success. And so, we often do evaluations associated with our individual programs, but also collecting other kinds of evidence. And sometimes it's emails from colleagues saying, I really appreciated and value your manual. Can I adopt it for my state or adapt it? And certainly we're always willing to share an extension. And so, but again, recording that when you know about it, having things on the web doesn't mean that you always know about when people are borrowing your materials or using your materials, but gathering evidence like that. It may be emails from participants. Some states and institutions do better jobs in terms of, I guess I'd say, incentivizing people for doing good jobs with evaluation, and some institutions have better support for that. So I'm still challenged in my role now as administrator to hire and keep an evaluation program specialist, because I think we badly need that. And so take advantage of those resources that you may have at your institution to help build your success record. That's certainly an element that we want our program specialists to have once we get one hired and keep them. So, I've kind of half joked with some of our county educators that when they have a participant at a workshop say, this is the best thing, I've ever seen, done, heard from Extension, to have, reach in and get your cell phone and record that, because we could use video clips on our Extension website to document the impact that we're having. But so think about and take advantage of any opportunity that you have to document your success. So in some cases, you may want to solicit letters and excerpt from that. So when you get to the AAEA fellow application stage, you'll see that most of those applications include a significant component that is quotes from other fellows. And so again, don't be bashful in terms of reaching out for help if you need that. So I'd also encourage you to study successful programs and individuals. And so look at what they're doing, think about elements that you might adopt, and ask for guidance and help. Again, on the how, I always looked at award applications as I would a grant proposal and tried to respond appropriately. And so that means starting early. And again, if you're aspiring to be an AAEA fellow someday, start really early in terms of building and documenting things, but certainly start early with respect to developing your package, and then think through every element of that in terms of making it easy for reviewers to see how you meet those criteria. So when I look at the AAEA Extension Award application, for instance, it has 4 elements. And so I would put together a document that has headings that are reply to each of those elements, and then respond in each of those components to that. So make it easy for people to see how you fit those. So I initially had offered to help draft materials, certainly be willing to do that. I know the first time that I had a department head ask me to draft my own materials, I was a little taken aback, because I had hoped that he understood my program as well as I did. And then I came to understand that, from I knew things that he was never going to know, and so I became more willing to contribute over time. So don't be bashful about doing that. And then, like a grant proposal, be sure you edit and look at it so that it presents yourself in the best light. Other ways to learn how to do a good job are to volunteer to serve on awards committees, not only within your department, but for AAEA, for other professional associations, because you get a lot of good insights from service in that way. Ask other award winners if they'd share their application. I got a request over Christmas break for one. Mine's several years old now, but I'm happy to share, and I know many other people are happy to share as well. So you can get insights from that. I would encourage you also not to look strictly within AAEA, but to look for other things that match your job description. So for instance, in my case, there are extension awards within the university. There were also the National Association of County Ag Agents. There's the Honor Society for Extension, Epsilon Sigma Phi, and they all had different kinds of things. So for instance, in the NACA, there was an outstanding learning module award. And so when we developed our Master Cattleman program, and it had elements of a beef manual, PowerPoints for all the educators, drafts of slides, quizzes, certifications, all those sorts of things. We put that together and submitted that, and we were runner up. But there are other agents, other organizations that may help contribute to your portfolio. And finally, I'd say if at first you don't succeed, try again, because committees change. And so a committee that has criteria can interpret them differently, weigh those different elements differently. And so again, success in one year doesn't mean you might not be successful in another year. So with that, I'll turn it over to the next panelist.
You're muted.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you very much, Damona. Next, we have Joan Fulton. Dr. Fulton was professor and associate department head in agricultural economics at Purdue until her recent retirement at the end of 2020. She had a three-way appointment with responsibilities in teaching, research, and extension, and also held numerous leadership roles at Purdue, including serving as associate department head from 2010 to 2020. She has served as chair of the University Senate and was selected by the Provost's office as one of five faculty to be a fellow in the CIC Academic Leadership Program. Fulton has played an active role in award nominations for her colleagues at Purdue University and the AAEA. She served as the chair of the AAEA Awards Committee for 2018-2019 and for 2019-2020. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Great to be here and be a part of this. So as Damona said, there may be some overlap, but hopefully the overlap just helps to identify the importance of the topics that we're thinking about. So as has already been noted, I was chair of the AAEA Awards Committee for the last 2 years prior to this one. As my role as associate department head at Purdue for the last 10 plus years, I had responsibility for writing up the award nominations for Purdue AggieCon, and I'll share a little bit more of my experiences from that. And from that, you'll sort of gain some tips, or some of what I think are some tips to award nominations. And I can honestly say that these experiences writing awards are really some of my, I consider my best professional development and professional experiences. It's really an honor to celebrate the successes of my colleagues, and in turn myself. I found that by being in charge of writing awards, there were many times when I was the logical person to be the one nominating, and I'll explain a little more about our process at Purdue, but it really worked out great. So I want to begin with just sharing a couple of my own personal stories with you to help highlight a couple of points. So I was an assistant professor at Purdue. I'd been there for about 1.5 years. And some of you may know that my career path was a little bit different than usual. I had actually given up promotion to associate professor while I was at Colorado State University to make the move to Purdue. And so I arrive at Purdue, I'm an assistant professor, and I had an objective function that was very clear in my mind: become tenured and get promoted to associate professor as soon as possible. Purdue is a fairly traditional university, and it especially was back in 1997, 98, 99. And so there was a bit of a sense of, paying your time, doing your dues. So I found myself coming up against that hurdle. In spite of having really good first couple of years, I was getting resistance. No, you haven't been here long enough. We can't put you forward for promotion. That one summer, I remember I was actually visiting on our family farm in southern Saskatchewan, and so I'm on this dial-up modem. I mean, this really low-key internet, and I get news that my graduate student had received the Outstanding Master's Thesis Award from the National Council of Farmer Cooperatives. I immediately forwarded that email to my then department head, Wally Tyner, and I got back, an email that I'll remember forever, and it had one word on it. Wally was never one to be very long-winded, and it just said, "Congratulations," in all caps. And I realized then the importance of that, because that gave him the ammunition he needed as he took my case forward to the committee at the college level and then on up through the ranks. And so indeed, I think that award was very critical in me getting promoted, that and not having to wait another few years for that. So as Damona was saying, this is part of that credentialing and that external recognition. So don't underestimate the value of that. So I'll say a little bit about the 2 AAEA Extension Awards I received, one for the Group Extension Award and then the Individual Extension Award for greater than 10 years. In both cases, we had submitted those nominations for several years. In a couple of cases, we'd heard back a little feedback from somebody that was a committee member. And especially for the individual award, I was ready to say, look, we've nominated me several years in a row. Let's move on and nominate someone else. And Ken Foster said to me, no, we're going to nominate you one more year. And that was the year I received it. And the same had held with our group extension awards. So as Simona said, committees change. The other thing that happens is our profession is full of people that are doing great work. So there is every year a phenomenal set of nominees. And so while the committees change, there is some overlap of the committee from year to year. So in a sense, and sometimes this is a little different one award to another, but there's a bit of a queue. And so if it's the first time somebody's being nominated, and especially if it's like a less than 10 years award, the committee will look and say, is this the last time this person can be nominated? So keep renominating. Keep revising every time. If you get any feedback, pay heed to it. Otherwise, seek out feedback. I mean, I was known to go to the people in our Ag Communications department to get feedback on how I could rewrite things so that the message would come through clearer. Okay, so in AgriCon, I chaired the awards committee since 2010. And so here is a few ways that we made this work. If you're in a department that has this kind of a structure or can set it up, and there's some important takeaways, use them. Otherwise, if not, think about how you can connect with colleagues and use some of these same tips. So I served as that chairperson. That continuity was helpful, but it wouldn't have been essential. Our departmental secretary, I just made sure she was a key member of our committee. In addition to, of course, setting up meetings, she kept a schedule of what awards were coming up. And so together we worked as a real team. She also provided that service of doing a final proofread and then putting everything into PDF formats and getting the final submissions. So we could really divide the tasks up that way. Our committee membership on our departmental awards committee, it changed pretty much. The whole committee changed every year. And that was really good to get different perspectives, because our decision of who to nominate for different awards was a committee decision. That also at times, if I had, and this only happened very seldom, but if I had somebody that was kind of bugging me, why aren't you nominating me for such and such? It was a committee decision, so I could always go back to that. We had a policy in our department that each nominee was responsible for developing their nomination. And I always said to them, I'm here to help you, but you need to, and so they needed to get me a full, and draft was really like almost complete would be the way you would think of it. And then I offered to assist with editing, and I solicited the outside letters of support. And so it was much easier for me to solicit those outside letters. So then as AAEA Awards Committee Chair, just so that you understand a little bit about how that process works, there's an executive group, and we were a 3-person group, and we met early in the academic year, and we were responsible for filling those subcommittees. And those subcommittees, people tended to serve 3-year terms, and the AEA office was phenomenal in getting us a spreadsheet. And so we were really just adding in. And so we would then go out as that executive group and complete each of those subcommittees. So we had a full roster for each of the subcommittees. And so some things I would do when I needed to recruit a new member. So I remember for the extension awards. And so I actually went back and looked to see who had recently received an extension award. And especially I would find some assistant professors, and I would write to them and say, now I'm sure you understand the value of this extension award, and here's an opportunity for you to give back to our association. I found that to be a fairly effective sales pitch, and I was usually successful in getting people onto the committee. So here's my pitch to you. When you are invited to join one of these subcommittees, accept that invitation. You may be in the role of being an assistant professor and being told that, just focus on getting your publications out. Well, of course, you do need to do that, but here are the benefits of serving on an awards committee. For AEA, your name's going to be printed in that AEA program. So you're getting recognition right there for being on that subcommittee. You'll become known to the other members of the subcommittee, and you will be able to read and see what the winning award nominations and all the runner-up award nominations look like. So when you start developing your own, you'll be much more effective at it. And if you are in the midst of where you're getting your name forward for awards, don't worry about going onto a committee, because there's always ways to be recused and so on. If you're submitting a nomination, building on everything that Damona said, you got to have that solid program. So I'll just leave all those comments because they were so well put. But here's a few of the sort of logistical aspects. Follow the instructions exactly. That means everything from the format, the spacing, the font size, the timing of when it's due. Get it in a day or two early so that you don't have to depend upon and be worried that internet's going down or anything like that. Don't undersell yourself and don't oversell yourself to the committee. And this is where working with somebody else can be very helpful. Sometimes we find it hard to write these things about ourselves, or other times people are leaving things out. And then my last point here is patience and persistence. So if you don't succeed first, keep trying for future time. So a few tips here. Apply early and often. So, and start small and then build to those larger awards. So start with awards at your own university. If you're part, look at what your topic area is that you're working on, whether it's research, extension, teaching, but then go to those local associations and build one, because I always say awards breed more awards. And if you look at our AAEA fellows and other recognized award winners, they've got a lot of early awards. And then those awards are referenced in the nominations for the bigger awards. But also be strategic. We've only got a limited amount of time. So think about the opportunity cost and go for those awards that are going to make sense for you and your program. Patience and persistence, I've already talked about. Every time you resubmit, go back through and at the minimum, reread it, because you can always write it to be more succinct and more clear. And of course, you can always add in the things that have been updated in your program over the year. But many times you can actually think about, when you come at it with fresh eyes, how to rewrite it, reorganize it. And then do partner with your colleagues, because that can be critical. And I think I was saying this just as we were getting started, but I really view that awards have private good characteristics and public good characteristics. We've already talked about the private good characteristics. It's going to help your VITA, it's going to help your program. Also public good characteristics, and that's why I've taken such pleasure in all of the awards work that I've done through my career. It's a way to help celebrate my colleagues. And, you know, so when my colleague would get an award, I would feel like I'd earned part of it because I'd helped write that nomination. And then I knew how much it was benefiting our institution and our profession as a whole. So I'll thank you and look forward to the rest of the comments and then the question and answer for sure.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll have, Kathy Kling with us. Kathy is a Tisch University professor in the Dyson School of Applied Economics and Management and faculty director at the Atkinson Center for a Sustainable Future. She is past director of the Center for Agricultural and Rural Development at Iowa State University, where she also held the President's Chair in Environmental Economics. She served as president of the Association of Environmental and Resource Economists, has held editorial positions at 10 economics journals, and has received 7 awards from professional associations for her research. She is an elected fellow of the Association of Environmental and Resource Economists, the Agricultural and Applied Economics Association, and a university fellow at Resources for the Future. And Kathy was elected to the National Academy of Sciences in 2015.
Thanks, Joyce. It's a real delight to be here. I really want to thank the AAEA organizing committee, Joyce, Lorian, and others for doing this and noting the importance of awards in promoting women and raising the visibility of the incredible work that so many people in our profession do. So a major thanks. It's a real pleasure to be on a panel with 2 such accomplished women. Dr. Fulton and Dr. Doi have long been in this profession, as have I, and it's been a pleasure to watch their great success in very different areas than some of the areas I work in. So again, I really want to thank and appreciate the putting together of panels like this. It takes time and leadership to do that. I knew I was going to be third, and I suspected, and I nailed it, that much of the really, the advice I had about the practicalities and the whys and hows would be well covered by Joan and Damona, and they did not fail to accomplish that. So I jotted down a few ideas and thoughts that I thought I would share that are maybe a little bit higher level. Some of which will touch on some of the things they talked about, but hopefully this will be complementary. So first, and I'll go. I liked Damona's how and then why and then how. So I'm gonna go in a similar sort of order. You should apply for awards, and you should apply for and write awards for your colleagues, particularly your female colleagues, for a number of reasons. I wrote down 5. Number 1, because you're as good as the men. There are wonderful women in our profession. Those women should be raised up just as much as the wonderful men in our profession. And really, it's as simple as that. We have women doing really great work. It's just as good as the work that is done by men, and it needs to be recognized. Second, Joan very much touched on this, your success and the success of women in garnering awards is one of the best forms of mentoring there is. It's a visible demonstration to the world that women are capable and as good as the men. There is nothing like being a graduate student or an assistant professor in a stage and watching women go across that stage and receive an award for something that you aspire to do. It's important, even if you aren't always 100% sure that you really deserve to be up there. Do it anyway. Don't second guess whether you are good enough. You are. Third, you deserve to be congratulated on your success. When you get an award, it's fun. People come up to you and they congratulate you. There's so much we do day to day that you get no positive returns from, or there's very long legs. You get an award, you get congratulations right away. That is healthy, that is good, and a really strong reason to do it. Another reason that I hesitated about whether sharing this, but I think I will. By having awards documented that on your vita, if you ever run into bad draws of tenure committees, if you ever run into difficult situations where someone is suggesting that you may not have the qualifications or the credibility, those awards prove them wrong. It is very hard to argue with an award from an association with the kind of respect that the AAEA has and suggest somehow that, well, yeah, they won that award, but they're really not that good. I've seen them do whatever. It's a really good form of insurance. And I hope most of you never need such insurance, but it's a valuable thing. You can't take it away once you've been honored. Number 5, you should get awards and you should nominate yourself and others because you're as good as the men. Maybe I mentioned that already. That's number 1 and number 5. Okay, I'm going to turn now to sort of the how. Much of almost everything concrete and practical, I would have to suggest Joan and Damona already told you. Those were fantastic. Listen to them. They nailed it. Okay. So again, I think I'm going to go a little bit higher level. So clearly you need to have a very strong record. That's kind of trite to say, but let me say a little bit more about that. There are ways you go about constructing a really strong record. And one of those is to be very intentional about what you're doing and why you're doing it. All of us on this participation here know that stories, qualitative and quantitative analysis and data that women step up to committees more often, they do more public service. And some of those things are really valuable and helpful. But we've also all heard stories where women feel like they get too wrapped up in committees, and before they know it, they don't have time to put into the kinds of work that is needed. It's important to be intentional early on in your career. And if you haven't been until this time, start now to think about, am I doing too much committee service? Am I not doing enough? Am I being on panels? Am I being invited? Am I on too many panels? Am I on too few of them? Be intentional about the combination of things that you take on. You cannot start thinking that way too early. Second, when you do decide to do something, do it well. Some of us, and I should take my own advice here, we say yes to a bunch of things and find that we really don't have the time to do a really good job with it. That can hurt you in awards and everything else, because your colleagues that you're working on projects with or doing things with, they notice that. Okay, they notice when someone is doing an excellent job on a research project that you're working together, or on a reviewers panel, or as a member of the AAEA executive board. They see who leans in and does good work, and that matters. And if you've overstretched yourself and you can't, you're not going to leave the kind of impression that really, frankly, is important. There's a lot of judgment in all of this. So when you do something, do your best to do it well. Third, mentoring. Everyone here probably has been encouraged to be mentors and or get mentoring. Both types of activities are hugely valuable in everything you do in your career. Career mentors, other women and men that are in similar parallel positions than you, talking to them, listening to what they do, not following necessarily what they do, but getting information and using it to judge. Be a mentor to junior people, men and women, and listen and observe from senior people. Again, don't necessarily follow just what they do, but listen, use your own smart mind. Advocate for other women. You can sometimes apply for awards for yourself. Other times you can help a friend, a colleague write their award. Again, you've already heard this. Joan did a nice job of describing that sort of process. Think of this as groups working together to help advance each other. I've got one final piece I would just like to share, and that is, it's really important, especially in the days and the year that we've all been through, to take care of yourself. I and people in my family have experienced depression. I know what it's like. People have stepped up and helped me when I needed it. I try to tell my story so that others know it's not something that stops you from achieving awards. It's not something that stops you from having a very happy life, as I do. But it is something real. People need to be aware of it. And if you are in need, ask for help. And if you see somebody that might be in need, lend a hand. So this is a fantastic panel. Thank you all very much. And I'm looking forward to more conversation.
Thank you so much. That was really great. I especially appreciate your final words there, Kathy. I'll just open it up to see if we have any questions from our audience or participants. We're fortunate to have our president, Don Tillmany, here as well, who mentions that mental wellness does need more attention.
I'll say something since to get the ball rolling. Thank you for all the thought into these presentations. I really appreciate this. I'm looking at the participant lists, and I want to talk on behalf of those of us who are not in sort of traditional settings. So not in an ag econ program necessarily, or not even in an academic program necessarily. And many of us don't have sort of that support system that you would see in a traditional ag econ department. So I noticed there were some key words that came out. You know, there might be a committee in a department that can help you with the awards process, but what do you recommend to those of us who sort of working in isolation? If we were interested in this type of opportunity, how would we start something like this? Because to me, it sounds a bit overwhelming without having a network with in-house.
I'm happy to chime in. I can see why it would feel overwhelming. I don't think I have great advice, and hopefully others will chime in here with ways to help that. But one thing I do know is early in my career, it was really me. It was my peers who I created a network with, and we helped each other write stuff like award nominations. If you're in a I was fortunate to be in a department with plenty of other agricultural and environmental economists. If you're not, peers at other universities, the mentoring programs that Seaway has, that the ASSA has for women, the CSWEP programs are a fantastic way to get a mentoring group of peers. And that might be an idea about how to go about doing that. But I would welcome other thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, so we can also put people, you know, Seaway, a lot of what we're doing is sort of matching people. You know, they sometimes come to us with needs and we try to match them with someone who could help or another mentor. So we, you know, if people are in that situation, they can feel free to come to us and maybe we can connect them with a few people that might be able to help.
Right. So, I mean, I'll just add in, Kathy's points were well taken. You know, sometimes you can go to your department head and say, gosh, I could sure use a little assistance here. Would you nominate me if I write the nomination? And then all they have to do is put their name on it and submit it. Sometimes you can go to a department head and say, you know, I've got this idea of putting an awards committee together, and, you know, here's a few that the committee could start with for nominations. And if they got a few successes early on, then that would give them the impetus to keep going. Just a couple of things thrown out there.
And if you're in an organization, if you're in an organization that doesn't have a department or that kind of support, maybe you've got communications staff that could help you with that. So, you know, there are lots of people that start out, for instance, in the grant writing process without a great supporting unit. And so I think it's just a matter of you know, trying to develop your package systematically, keeping those files good, reaching out to others for feedback and those sorts of things that help you build better packages. Oops, that's not what I want to do.
We had a related question from our audience about establishing a department awards committee and whether you all had any advice for how to structure that.
Well, I'll jump in because I was the one that talked about that. So yes, get one going. And so a couple of things I would say, yes, get it going. Make sure that the department head or the department infrastructure is well behind it. So you've got some institutional integrity behind it, and then that helps for the longevity. As you get going with that, I really do think you want to seek out somebody or members of that committee who really do value the public good aspect of things. I think that my sense of value in public goods was a real attribute as I served on that, because I really did feel when I'd be, you know, because let's face it, there's deadlines for awards, and the parallel to grant writing is very, very similar. We all come up to those deadlines. You're living to those deadlines. And so it would often be late at night, the night before, or that weekend before the AAEA awards were due, and I would devote pretty much my whole weekend to reviewing all the different nominations from the department. So had I not had a real strong sense of the value of the public good, I would have resented that time. Instead, I really saw that as a real opportunity to honor and serve my colleagues, and so I found it very enjoyable. So and then I put up a few tips there. Use a committee structure, that can be really helpful, but do also get a spreadsheet going and plan. And then if you've nominated somebody one year, unless there's some real good reasons not to nominate that person again, keep nominating them till they get the award, because of that queue, of the fact there's a queue, and that the award nomination can get better each time. So those would be some of the tips I throw out.
I see a bunch of questions here, so I'm going to go to Berber. Hi, Berber. I'm going to go to hers first because I know her. Yes, so we actually, Kate Fuller and Deepti Kolati put together a list of AA awards that we will be sharing. Will it, Joyce, will it be at the same will it be in the same location as the recording for this, or should I put that on my website? What do you suggest we do with these lists?
Yeah, we'll definitely have both linked from the Seaway website.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to go through the other questions, Joyce? There's one from Mary.
Yeah, there was a related one from Zoe. She's asking, can you talk a little bit about the difference between nominations for AAEA awards versus awards from other organizations, how they might differ in terms of what's expected or what might fit together sort of well?
Well, I'll comment on that as well. So the basic premises of having a great program, following all the rules and criteria, and making sure that you really show the impact of the programming, all that holds. Many times, I would prepare a nomination for our college level teaching awards, and then I could turn that nomination around and submit it for the AAEA teaching awards, having to be cognizant of what those different specifications were. But so in fact, rather than focusing on what the differences are, focus on the similarities, but ensure that you follow all the guidelines, because you can really leverage your work that way.
And I mentioned, I think, a couple of things for extension. I mean, there are different kinds of organizations that will offer awards for different elements. And so if you're building a package, for instance, for career type awards, then you've got to show some strength in different areas. And so you might get, for instance, a module award, or you might get a newsletter award from different institutions. I think all those pieces are helpful, again, in terms of building a portfolio of things that shows the breadth of your contributions over time. So look to, I don't know what kind of award list you're building, but I would suggest, for instance, for extension the two, that you include the NACA and ESP and some other things like that in the types of organizations that you look to for possibilities.
There's some questions we missed. So one was raised by Mary Bowman. Do we have any advice about nominating students or I think we covered colleagues. I'm not sure if we covered whether there's a different process for students.
Well, I've nominated students, and so the way that it works at Purdue is that if they're graduate students, then sometimes through the awards committee, I would initiate the nomination. Sometimes our graduate coordinator would be the one initiating. We would just coordinate with each other, but the same kind of, so yes, get the students in the mix, and the more they get, the sooner they get recognized, the better.
And then there's one other one that we missed earlier from Tom. We didn't have a department committee and are now thinking about forming one. Any suggestions?
I provided a few comments about that
Joan.
early, so, but yes, do it.
Yeah, I mean, I might just add on to what Joan had a great answer before, but more to the why. One of the things that I've observed with, I've never been a department chair, and I hope to never be one. Those are blessed people that take that role on, and thank you to them. But Awards, I have seen very effective use of awards by department chairs in negotiations and discussions with deans. So when your department, and this goes to the public good aspect that Joan has referred to repeatedly, when a department has multiple AAEA fellows, for example, an effective department chair or any awards, I'm just using that as an example, I don't mean to, when teaching awards, this is a national organization. A department chair can make very effective arguments about the quality of their faculty, the need for more funding, the need for, look at, we have won these awards. This is the association. And you can be very clear that the Agronomy Association and the Animal Science Association, those chairs all know about playing that game. It's not a game, it's important and valuable. I shouldn't frame it that way, but it's really important. And so a department chair who's really serious about raising the visibility and doing a strong job for their department wants a committee and wants help and wants people to help write their own nominations that then can be put forward. It is really good for everybody.
There was a question from Dawn also about how do you think we should encourage most cross-institution nominations? Those from larger institutions have systems, but many do not. And this is something Seaway has been considering as well, which is one of the reasons we wanted to submit a fellows application this year on behalf of a woman, is thinking about how we can bridge some of those gaps. And so I would love to hear input from those on the panel about how we might be able to fill those. I know you've mentioned working with peers, but if there's some other way we could do it through the association or Seaway or some other kind of infrastructure.
I think it's a fantastic idea. It's a constant challenge because our structure and how incentives are set up, we're not rewarding the cross-institutional, although some research and extension programs are now putting more value on the multi-institutional format. So that may be in fact a place to start. So those research and extension programs that are, and now we're seeing some teaching programs where there's been some real cross-interest across institutions. So if any of you are on this call that fit into one of those categories, then connect with your colleagues. And just as you all divided up the work to write the proposal to get the project in the first place, now you've probably written reports for this project. So actually nominating your team for an award is really not that much work at this point in time because you've done all that good work. So I think that might be a good starting spot.
Let's see, another question in the Q&A. Do you see any downside in terms of morale and mental impact on the nominee if the nominations are not successful after several attempts?
I'll comment on that because that's certainly something I have I've observed in colleagues that they feel, in fact, to be frank, I've had colleagues who say, well, I don't want to get put up unless I'm certain I'm going to get it. I'm not, this is not generic to women, or this just a male or female thing. This is just generic. And, I'm sorry that they feel that way. I think that if it would be so painful for them not to get it, it's a reason not to put yourself up. I mean, we are all different in I don't think it's the right way to look at these awards. I think it's very similar to publishing. Happily, I write down on my Vita papers that have been published and grants that have been received, not the myriad and myriad and myriad numbers that have been rejected, have ended up in the garbage can. And awards are the same. So it is hard to get rejected in a journal paper. It is hard to get rejected. I think if you can steel yourself, because it of course is a very real possibility. if you can steel yourself to see that as just like another journal article, then I encourage you to do awards. But I don't want to suggest that for some people, maybe it really just would be too painful. And that's fair enough. Everybody has to know themselves and what they, what they're up for. So.
Yeah, one thing that I would do when I would be commenting to people, if I got the news that their award was not successful, I would email them and I would say, so we weren't successful this year, but we'll keep trying. And, or this was our first year, so we're early on. I would make comments like that. And I think that that's the approach you take with a journal article that gets a rejection. So treat it the same way.
I would say it's still a positive affirmation by the department if they think that you're an outstanding candidate to have them want to continue to submit that. But again, I think Kathy said it well. If the individual objects to and the rejection is too much, then you honor their wishes. But
I was just going to say that even though we've been focusing so much on the AAEA awards, one thing that came up is there are a lot of awards available at the regional conference, through the regional associations as well. So you need not limit yourself to the AAEA awards. If you spend a lot of time putting together a packet, it seems that you could easily try to recycle some of that packet to receive a reward at one of the regional associations. So does anyone on this panel have experience doing that?
Yes, I'd say those are definitely good building blocks. I'm surprised I didn't remember to include it in my list. So Southern Ag Econ, Western, other associations have similar, sometimes slightly different, but often parallel either career or program awards. And those are great building blocks for later awards.
And then some of the more disciplinary food distribution network, some of those have awards as well. So any and all of those, definitely. And you can beg, borrow, and steal the material you write in one nomination to put into another nomination. I also have seen some things come up in the comment about mentoring. So just a quick plug, AAEA has a mentoring award this is just its second year right now. Last year was its first year. So if you've been mentoring, then get your colleagues to write you up for that nomination. If you've been mentored by someone really awesome, then write them up.
Yes, and we want to remind everyone that the deadline for AAEA awards nominations is February 8th. So you have just 1 month exactly to get those nomination packets done. I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned, Kathy, about being intentional about what you do and how you spend your time. And this is something we've been discussing in Seaway, is thinking about whether awards criteria ought to be adjusted as well to accommodate the things that women are often called on to do or feel inclined to do, perhaps more so than men, or whether it is something that women ought to adjust. So what is the balance there between thinking about an expanded set of criteria versus sort of continuing with the principles that have been guiding us in the past?
I don't know. That's a really interesting. Oh, and someone just dropped in the chat that was the impetus behind the mentoring award. Mm-hmm. That makes great sense to me. Yes, and I'm sure I'm not going to say anything you all haven't thought about. One doesn't want there to be, oh, those are the women's awards, that, and obviously you're not suggesting that, but that can be, but something actually, yeah, no, let me stand down on that one. It's a great idea. Using the mentoring award as an example, that makes great sense. And I totally applaud that. I've had great male mentors, by the way, as well as female mentors. And there's advantages and we all, the pluses and minuses. And even though I am unabashedly promoting the quality of women's work, the research that we do, I in no way mean to diminish the contributions of our male colleagues. It's just that we are as good as them, and we deserve to get as many awards, and we need to demonstrate that. But yeah, to know that was the reason, the thinking behind the mentoring award is fantastic. I couldn't applaud that more. It was really good.
Yeah, if we think about this from the set of language and terminology that those that are in diversity and inclusion would use, it can give us some insights. And so, Kathy, your comments are right on. I mean, implicit bias happens everywhere. We all, are experiencing part of that. So we need to attack this problem, because it is a problem. We've now identified the problem on the multiple fronts. So one is, sometimes we need to create new awards, like the mentoring award. We need to reevaluate how we think about who we nominate. So we need to reevaluate our own psyche on that, because sometimes we're not getting, and Kathy, your comments were bang on that. When I said that we had a committee at the department level to think about who we were going to be putting up for nominations, and that committee changed, that was so important, because everybody comes to the table with a different set of implicit biases. And so by changing that up, that was one way. It wasn't perfect, but it was one way to help address that. So those are multiple fronts, multiple levels, but being very, very deliberate and cognizant about it is just critical.
I'd just like to chime in. Thank you so much for commenting on implicit bias. I mean, as the research has come out in the last decade or two, it's completely changed my view and understanding about an awful lot of things. Affirmative action mentoring programs, a whole host of things. And the point that we are all full of implicit bias, women towards other women, men towards other men, it is everywhere. I would love to see some committee, probably a high level, come out with a set of best practices for every time a committee that is going to judge other people meets, what they should do in the first 10 minutes of those meetings to remind themselves about implicit bias, and to talk about what they're going to do their best to each individually minimize it. Because I don't know that there's any other way but to be fully cognizant that we all do it, and to constantly remind ourselves. So when we sit down to do a tenure evaluation, when we sit down to do recruiting and decide who we're going to bring to campus, it seems like there should be a set of best practices to get people to mentally fully be aware that even though they're sure they're not biased, they're not prejudiced, they are. And they can't help it, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It is part of human being cognition, but we need ways to acknowledge it and help our processes, our committees move beyond it. That's a small ask, huh? Could somebody figure that one out?
Well, you've just reminded me, we do that to a certain degree in terms of planning for hiring. So when we have search and screening committees, particularly at high levels, we have people come in to talk to us about setting aside our biases. And so maybe materials that have been developed there could be adapted to this kind of thing. But I like that. That's a great idea.
I actually think this comes back a little bit to some of what Damona was discussing. You had some really innovative suggestions about how to document your impact. And so I was wondering if you had additional suggestions, maybe more on the teaching and advising and service side, if any of you have suggestions about new ways to kind of document that, right? I think we sometimes count undergraduate students. It doesn't seem to, I don't know how the awards committees look at that, but certainly we are putting in time, right, working with them. So, yeah.
Well, if we're documenting teaching, I think we need to think about a teaching portfolio broadly defined. And then scholarship broadly defined in the teaching area. So that means new courses, developing new courses, all the materials that go along with that, new and creative teaching mechanisms. That means, you know, if you can follow students and what the impacts of their careers have been through time. So we are starting to see, and then have you taken the stuff that you've done for teaching and turned that into symposia at AEA or WAE or Southern AggieCon Association, or you know, some of the other regional groups? Have you then taken it to the next point and gotten journal articles submitted from that? Have you gotten research grants on that? So, you know, we have a variety of metrics we think of professionally, and historically we had not applied those metrics in the teaching area, but we're all creative people. And so, and then as we do that, I really believe we will come out with additional metrics that we can use. But my point is, start with the metrics that as academicians we're comfortable with. Journal articles, dollars or grant dollars, those are things that everybody on the research side has said, yeah, those are gold standards ways that we evaluate. So then use those same ones in teaching, and to a certain extent, we've been doing that for a bit longer in extension, and then continue to build on that. I saw another question about what if you're not feeling, you're feeling cautious or uncomfortable about, you know, putting yourself forward. And, you know, I think, Kathy, your comments early on were perfect. You know, you've got it, do it. And, you know, sometimes if you've served on a committee and you've looked at other nominations and then you go, well, gosh, my case would stand up, you know, it would chalk up really good there. So do it and just, you know, go for it.
And that's where having friends helps too. Having a group of that you talk with about professional things, and you know, hopefully they'll encourage you and help you get over that hurdle.
Great. Thank you all so much.
I think Ruth had a really excellent point. I don't think, I'm not sure what we personally can do about this, because this is really speaking to the criteria of the awards. But she said that, you know, is there a way to sort of change or alter the criteria to recognize the kinds of roles that women often play is really important. And I think that's something that Seaway has really been thinking about quite a bit, because we recognize that women in the field do a variety of things. They don't just publish, you know, a million journal articles, but they're also sort of out there talking to farmers. They're sort of doing a lot of outreach that may not necessarily get recognized in some of these high-level awards. And so I just want to say that Ruth's point is well taken. I just don't know. Really, I think this is a point that needs to be discussed with sort of higher level, in the higher level decision making power than us. But I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think related to that, you know, also speaks to why we don't see a lot of racial diversity necessarily in our awards, because I think a lot of the activities that we reward are those done at R1 institutions, right? Not at other types of land grant institutions. So again, thinking about how we can expand the criteria to incorporate different types of contributions, I think is something that Seaway and COSBAY both would like to pursue more in the future. And related to that, we had a question from an attendee from Deeply about how can we document contributions to diversity, equity, and inclusion in teaching, research, and extension, and is it recognized anyway?
Well, I'll jump in on that, because I spent 2 years in Purdue's provost office providing leadership in our Division of Diversity and Inclusion. And so we as academia have a long way to go on that. And my personal experience is anybody that is doing work either formally or informally in the diversity and inclusion area, you know, my heart's out to you and my hat's off to you, because this is some of the most critical work that we can be doing. It's very, very time consuming. It's very, very emotionally and physically draining and challenging. So that's sort of the negative part. The positive part is, you know, what should academia be about? It should be about, you know, looking for new ideas, new truths, new thoughts, new patterns. And if we don't think that embracing each and every person for the skill sets and the gifts that they bring to the table, we've really lost the main mantra of what academia should be about. So I really see it as core and central, but our institutional setup, our structures are not there yet. And I wish I had a better answer to that. But in some ways, I personally felt like after 2 years, I didn't get credit for what I'd spent my 2 years doing, but I do get the credit every time I reach out and connect with the people I had worked with during those years. So I do see this work as very much still being at those early levels of not being established into the infrastructure to get the credit for it, but we're getting the credit on other levels. So I'm retired now, but my heart's still in that area. But for those of you working in it, Godspeed to you, because it's important stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I only have sort of a downer small addendum, which is that there are places that now require that you provide some documentation. University of California system, when you apply for a job there, you have to have a statement. There are some grants that I've been on panels of where that's nominally identified as criteria, and frankly, it's not often used in a very meaningful way. So we have a long, I guess I'm just echoing, we have a long ways to go. The good part is that we are seriously at least talking about it now. I mean, at least that. So that's a big step. You got to acknowledge it before you can really do anything, but we got a long way to go there.
And the AAEA has been, using their task force on diversity, equity, and inclusion to think about how we can expand awards criteria and include metrics for diversity, work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think that will be forthcoming. And I also wanted to invite Zoe Plakius to tell you a little bit about some new awards that that Seaway has proposed to the board that will hopefully fill in some of those gaps as well. And Zoe's been the chair of our subcommittee on for developing these awards.
Hi there, thanks Joyce. Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, okay. I had phone issues there for a second. Yeah, so we have developed a proposal for 2 awards, a junior award, less than 10 years of non-consecutive experience in the profession, and more than 10 years. And those are in review by the board, perhaps right now, because Dawn just ran off to a meeting. And so the goal with those awards is to create a pathway for valuing the contributions in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And also the senior award has a very similar format to the fellows award. So we want it to be very easy to reuse that packet or build on that packet for a fellows award for deserving people, and use DEI as one additional aspect that we can build in more to the fellows award and consideration for fellows moving forward. And the committee is also co-chaired by Valentina Harskara at Auburn University. And so we've been working together with the team on that this year.
So we're excited. Hopefully those will be approved and available soon. And along those lines, I just want to mention to everyone in attendance here, we are looking, Seaway is also looking to develop some metrics for evaluating contributions to diversity, equity, and inclusion that we can use for our own award, and perhaps recommend to the board for use with AAEA awards and evaluations of fellows nominations. So if you'd like to share any of those ideas with us, we would love to hear them and see if we can amplify them up the chain. Any other questions from our attendees? We still have a few more minutes, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and definitely thank our panelists for joining us with and providing some really great information and insight and inspiring, I think, hopefully most of us or all of us to think more about going out for awards and making that part of our package. All right.
Thank you
Well,
again for pulling this all together. It's really been great. I appreciate really being part of it.
Oh, we really appreciate your contribution.
Always learn more. Just listening, I learned some stuff too. So it's always good. Really good.
Great.
And thanks for the great work Seaway's doing on thinking about alternative awards. I was not aware, and I'm really impressed and appreciate the work you're doing in that space. It's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When is the deadline for all the awards again? Is it February 8th?
I think so.
Okay, everyone, now everyone should apply.
That's
okay?
right. You have 1 month.
Go out and write your nominations.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Take care.
Bye.